Yeah, good afternoon, David. It's a real pleasure to have you this afternoon in Paris. We are at the Web3. You've just heard about Beirut this morning, about Sarkozy right now. What do you think about the influence on blogs, the internet, the blogosphere, the fifth power? Has it had any influence last year in the US, this year for the midterm elections? How do you feel the next step, and especially for 2007?
Well, I don't know what will happen in France. I don't know what will happen in the U.S. I certainly don't know what will happen here. Blogs have very quickly become, and I think in both of our countries, a standard part of the campaign page. I think that will happen to businesses as well, by the way. So that a page that doesn't have a blog just looks like it's a brochure and who wants to read it. It's not very interesting. The initial effect in the U.S. Came about directly through the Howard Dean campaign. He was an unknown, little-known governor who became the leading candidate for months, in part because he was against the war in Iraq, but also in part because they featured a blogger on their homepage. For the first time, the national candidate did that. And the blogger spoke as one of us, as a supporter. So here, normally there are only two voices that are allowed to talk in a campaign. It's the candidate and then the press representative in the media. Right, who talks to the media. And they put this third person. And this third person, unlike the other two, was uncontrolled. The candidate and the media person try to stay on message, say the same thing over and over. And if you did that on a blog, nobody would read it. It's so boring. So they had an actual supporter who was writing as a real human being, saying what was on his mind and giving us an insight into the campaign. And so what happened was that people bonded, felt emotionally attached to and entertained and interested in the blogger, in some ways more so than in the candidate. And that gave us permission to be interesting to one another, not to think that the only interesting things ever said are by the candidate and his press officer. So that great welling up of trust in us as interesting people, which is at the root, I think, of democracy. It's a bigger change than just posting a blog.
Yeah, but Howard Dean hasn't been able to transfer or to make it work, I want to say, in the real life. How can it be the blog with politics not only be the second life? Because Howard Dean, he went very well on the blogosphere, on the internet, but then when he lost immediately in New Hampshire, if I'm right. He immediately lost.
First in Iowa, then in New Hampshire.
Yeah. So why and how can it be so that it starts from the internet, everything happens on the internet, but then it works also in real elections, I want to say.
Well, so absolutely he lost, and I wish he had won, and that would have been even better than losing. But he lost. The internet's not everything. But it still transformed the way that people are doing politics. And many politicians have learned from this, from the Howard Dean experience, only that they should put a blog up and that you can raise lots of money over the internet, which are the wrong lessons. The actual lesson of the Dean campaign, I think, is much closer to the spirit of the internet. The Dean campaign tried to, very explicitly, very much on purpose, tried to break the usual pattern, which is a broadcast model. One person is interesting, he, occasionally she, gives the message, and it goes down to the little people who are us, the citizens. So they tried to undo that by allowing citizens, enabling us to connect with one another, to talk with one another, and not to always wait for the day's message from Howard. That has not yet been picked up by many politicians, especially at the national level. But slowly it is. So in Massachusetts, the state where I live, we just elected a governor who won overwhelmingly, 25% ahead of his opponent. And